Hello again, Lockpicking Paul here, and what I've got tonight is another one of the locks that Tequila Dave sent me from his difficult to tension package. And so this is part of the Sparrows Gridlock progressive wafer set, and it's modelled on a Carlock. So this is very much like a 1980s or 1990s double wafered ignition lock. And it's not your average wafer lock. This it has an absolutely monstrous keyway. That's huge, and you can just see down there. You can just see the wafers, which are really quite sizable. I mean, there's not a lot of room to maneuver between them. You sort of have to hook around them and snake over them, or they do set very deeply as well. And this is a lock you can mess around with. It comes apart quite readily. There's a big spring-loaded pin in here. We'll take this apart in a minute and have a look inside. You can rake these open, and I have raked this open. You can also open them with a jiggler. To be honest, to rake them, it's a bit of work. It's more that you have to sort of do a rock. You do rocking. You do one side, then the other side, then one side, then the other side, and 3 or 4 goes around that loop, and it'll open. I did have a go, sort of more traditional raking method. I didn't get it open doing that. But what I thought we'd do this evening is do a single pin pick of this, which is a bit more fun, if I'm honest. It's a very talkative lock. There's a lot of core movement when you set the wafers. And it's got a few things that make this a little bit awkward. So this is a long lock, as you can see. I'm just going to push the pick in. Right, so that pick now is resting on the first wafer of the bottom row. That's how deep it is. That's how far you go in the lock before you hit a wafer. Now, let's go to the 5th wafer, because there's 10 wafers in here, 5 on the top, 5 on the bottom. Right, so I'm now on the 5th wafer. You've got to go in a long way to get right to the back of a lock, and that's actually the last wafer to bind is in fact the 5th right at the bottom. So, and that was one of the things that really held me up single pin picking this when I first had a little play with it, is I could not open it. I could open it with raking, but I couldn't open it with a single pin pick. And it was just the fact that I wasn't going in deep enough to hit the last wafer hard enough to click it into place, because obviously when it's on the last wafer, it locks up pretty tight. There are serrations on the wafers in this, which makes setting the wafers a little bit more difficult. So I think what we'll do is we'll show you that. So to get it open, in fact what we'll do is put the key in, because that'll stop the wafers flying around. Unlock it. And then what you do is push this pin in. Then, oh, there you go. We have avoided the flea circus. So there is the pin and the spring. And then we just slot the core out like that. So you can see all 10 wafers like there. In fact, what we'll do is we'll have a little zoom in. And as I pull the key out, the wafers will sort of pop up. Trying to make sure none of them sort of fall out. But you can see the serrations on the wafers, which makes life a little bit harder when it comes to setting them. So, yeah, interesting. It's certainly a huge wafer lock. What we'll do is we'll get this. I'm going to have to switch modes on my camera, because I won't be able to zoom in and then set it to a manual focus if I don't switch modes, and I don't want this thing auto-focusing continually. So I'm going to stop the video here and we'll be back in a second, so we can see this thing picked. Hang on a moment, let's put that back. You need sort of 3 hands to put this back together again, really. There you go. Done. Right, back in a moment. Right, let's get to picking. Just use this cheap pick set tensioner because it fits that huge hole well. and my Moki deep hook. There's so much room inside this lock. That almost makes it a little bit harder. And there you go. Open. Right, well, Tequila Dave, thanks very much for a really interesting lock. Definitely not hard, but awkward, and certainly more resilient than your average wafer lock. But yeah, thanks again for a really interesting lock. And I hope you enjoyed that. Enjoy your picking. Cheers.